All right, guys, so we're taking a look at the functions learning target 1.5. So this one is dealing with combinations of functions. So we're going to look at addition, subtraction, and multiplication, as well as, evaluating each of these, okay? So first thing we got to do is make sure we understand what's happening here. So first thing we should notice is we were given two functions, right? In this case, h of x and g of x. Okay, looks like we use h and g and f quite often. Okay, sometimes different variables, sometimes not. Then we're going to be told what we want to do. Okay, so in this case, it's telling us to take function h and add function g to it, and for the variable x, which means what that basically is telling us is that we're making a new function here. Okay, that's the general idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take h of x, but I don't need this part of them. That just tells me which ones we're dealing with, right? And I'm going to also take x minus 5, and I'm going to add those two functions together. Okay? So now it comes down to is just combining some like terms. So remember, like terms, they have the same variable, and it's going to be raised to the same power. Okay? In the case of just regular numbers, they have no variable, so that's what they share. So I should see that 3x and 1x are going to be combined, and they'll become 4x, because 3 plus 1 equals 4. Then positive 4 and negative 5, we can combine those constants. 4 minus 5 would be negative 1. 1 and 4x can't be combined together, so that's our answer. That's what h plus g to the x is going to equal. Okay, so that's really all we've got going on for these next ones. Okay, so again, g plus f, we've got g, we've got f, we're going to add those two together. So I write g down, and we're going to add f down. And again, we look for like terms. Now, you should notice here I've got a t squared and also a t. Okay, like terms have same variable, which these two do, right? They've both got the t here. But it's also the same power, which in this case we've got a 2 here, and we'd have a 1 here. So they're not the same power. They're not like terms. So this 3t squared is just going to remain 3t squared. Then I've got these two negative 2t's. So negative 2 plus a negative 2 would give us a negative 4t. And then we've got a positive 5 and a positive 3, which would make a positive 8. And so there is my new function of t. It is right there, because I can't combine anything further. Okay, so that's all we got going on. So again, g of x, 3x plus 1, plus f of x, which is 4x plus 1. Combine the variables, 3x and 4x make 7x. Combine the constants, 1 and 1 make 2. And there is my new function. We'll call it h of x in this case, because I don't like rewriting the whole thing. All right, so f of x plus g of x, same thing. So 2x minus 2 plus x cubed plus 5. Now, there's no other x cubes, and generally I like to go with the highest power first, so x cubed is right there. Then we put 2x, it's positive, so we put plus. Then negative 2 and 5 give us a positive 3, because 5 minus 2 is 3. All right, so let's just keep on trucking. Okay, so we're still dealing with adding for the variable. So x plus 3, g of x, plus h of x, x cubed minus 3. Again, can't combine that with anything. Can't combine that with anything. Positive 3 minus 3 is 0. I could put a plus 0, but we really don't do that. So we'll just leave it x cubed plus x. Number 6, f is t plus 1, plus negative 3t plus 1. T minus 3t would give us a negative 2t. 1 plus 1 is positive 2, and there's my function. Now, if we look at the next ones, 7, 8, 9, and 10, those four, we should now notice something different, right? that now instead of a variable here, we have numbers. Okay, so now it wants to evaluate for the number. Okay, that's even easier. Here's the trick. Just take each one and evaluate it separately. So I'm going to evaluate f for -3, which means anywhere where there's an x, I replace it with a -3. Okay, same with g. g of -3, we replace x squared, -3 squared, plus 2 minus -3. Then we're going to solve for each one. So f of -3 is going to equal 4 times -3 is -12. Okay, so f of -3 is -12. And we're going to add to that g of -3, which is, let's solve it. So -3 squared would be -3 times -3, which is 9, plus 2. Negative and a negative would make a positive. So 9 plus 2 is 11, plus 3 gives us 14. So g of -3 equals 14. So I'm going to go -12 plus 14, and so our answer is +2. Okay, that's what we're headed for, is that +2 there. All right, number 8, same idea. We're solving, or not solving, evaluating for -2. So everywhere there's an x, I'm going to put a -2. So g of -2 equals -2 plus 3. Negative would make it a +2 plus 3, which would be a 5. Same idea for the h. I'm going to replace the x with -2. So -2 times 2 times -2 is -4, minus 5 is a -9. So g of x becomes 5, h of x becomes -9. 5 plus -9 gives us -4 as our answer. Okay. Now, I've seen some students do it this way, where they take the first one and they put the letter in, so they go 3a, then they go, or 3 times 0, then they go -2 times 0 plus 3, and then they work it out that way. Okay. Generally speaking, that's okay to do that, because most of the time you're going to end up with the right answer. However, when we get to some minuses, we'll run into some issues, and I'll show you what I mean there. Okay. But again, we take the number, in this case -10, we replace the variables with it, and then we evaluate. So 4 times -10, -40 plus 4, -36. So f of -10, input of -10, output of -36. We're going to add to that whatever the output is for g of -10. So g of -10, we get negative on the outside, -10 squared, plus 2 times -10. So -10 squared is 100, but that negative outside stays, so -100. Then 2 times -10 is -20, so plus a -20, which would give us -120. So g of -10 equals -120. So -36 plus -120 gives us -156. And there's our answer. So that's how we deal with the addition stuff, okay? Now let's take a look at subtraction and see how we deal with that one. So subtraction is pretty similar to addition. We're going to start off with g of n, so -3n cubed minus 5n squared. We're also going to have h of n minus 4. The thing we have to pay attention to here is this minus right here actually applies to both of these back here. So what I like to do is put a parentheses. Okay, you don't need to put a parentheses around the first one, because the minus only affects the second function, in this case n minus 4. Then what I do is that negative applies to both of them. So I get -3n cubed minus 5n squared minus n plus 4. Then I look, can't combine that, or with that, or with that. So honestly, that's my answer. Okay, so that one turned out to be pretty easy. Number 12, let's try that one. So x squared minus 4 is h. We're subtracting 2x. Now, this minus 2x is by itself, isn't it? So will just be minus 2x. And again, I can't combine any, so I'd start with my highest one and rewrite it like this, and there's my answer. Now let's see if 13 gives us anything we can combine. So 4t minus 1 minus, and then I put it in parentheses, t squared minus 2t, because that's going to change it to negative 2t plus 2t. And then 4t minus 1 stays the same. No other t squared, so negative t squared. 4t and 2t make a 6t, and then a negative 1, and there's my answer. Okay, 14, same idea. 4x plus 2 minus, I'll put it in parentheses, 2x minus 2. So it's 4x plus 2 minus 2x plus 2, right? Because that negative applies to both and changes a negative to a positive. 4x minus 2x is 2x. 2 plus 2 is positive 4. And there's my new function. So when we're dealing with subtraction, that's kind of the major difference there, right? So 15 and 16, same idea. 2x minus 4x minus 5, which means 2x minus 4x plus 5. 2x minus 4x is negative 2x, no other 5, plus 5 gives me it. Then 16, 2x minus 1 minus 3x. In this case, because we're just subtracting the 3x, I really don't need the parentheses. 2x minus 3x is just going to be a negative x minus 1. Now, for 18, 19, 20, 17 as well. Okay, so these four, 17 through 20, now again, we're evaluating with subtraction. But these ones, I'm going to treat just like I did the addition. So I'm going to evaluate them first, because then all I have to do is take the answers and put them in and subtract them, so I don't run into that same issue that I could have on the ones up there. So 10 plus 1 is 11. F of 10 equals 11. Input of 10, output of 11, minus 3 times 10 is 30, plus 4, 34. G of 10 equals 34. So we get 11 minus 34. Which gives us negative 23. Had to double check that with a calculator because it was throwing me off, which is all right to do. Okay. Now I said sometimes some people will like to just go plug in that negative 6 for n, but then write things up as we see, and this one's going to be a weird one to do because we've got a negative 6, so it would be negative 6 minus 4, and all of that would be subtracted. Okay. The problem again is making sure that you recognize that that minus is applying to the whole thing. Okay. So negative would be a plus 6, but then minus would make it a minus 6. So negative 6 plus 2 minus 6, but then that minus changes that minus 4 to a plus 4. Okay. Which negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4 minus 6 is negative 10 plus 4 gives us negative 6 for our answer. That's why I think it's easier to just do things separately. And you'll recognize that it's a lot easier to come up with the same answer. And you don't run the risk of forgetting that negative, that minus, which causes all sorts of issues. Okay, so again, I would say just go for 0. That becomes negative 0 plus 4, which is just 4. So h of 0 is 4. This becomes 0 squared minus 3 minus 0, which that's 0. 0 minus 3 minus 0 is just negative 3, and that's g of 0. So h of 0 is 4, minus g of 0 is negative 3. 4 minus a negative 3 is really 4 plus 3, which is 7. That just seems a lot easier for me to do. So negative 3, so we've got negative 3 cubed minus 4, okay, which would be negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3, so negative 27 minus 4, which is negative 31. Then we've got negative 4 times negative 3 minus 4, that's h of x. Positive 12 minus 4 gives us 8. Negative 31 minus 8 will give us negative 39. Okay, So that's how we deal with our subtraction. All right, so now let's talk about the multiplication. Okay, so the multiplication can be kind of tricky, but again, we're going to treat some things the same. So let's start with 27 through 30 when we're actually evaluating here with the numbers and show you that we treat it the same way. So I go g of 0 equals negative 4 times 0, which is 0. So g of 0 is 0 times h of 0 would be 0 squared plus 5 times 0, which would be 0 plus 0, which is just 0. So h of 0 is also 0. So 0 times 0 is 0. That's a lot of zeros, huh? So that was kind of a worthless example. But let's try the next one, 29. And I know that's technically not the next one, but we're doing it. So f of 2 equals 2 times 2 plus 2. So 4 plus 2 gives us 6. So f of 2 equals 6. Then negative 2 equals g of 2. That was an easy one, right? So negative 2, so 6 times negative 2 equals negative 12. So you can see it works out pretty much the same way as all the others. The only difference is that at the end, instead of adding or subtracting, in this case you're multiplying. But if it were addition, you would just add. 2 times 9 is 18, minus 4 is 16, 8 times 16. That one I'll use the calculator again for. Oops. 128. So, had this problem been a plus, then it just would have been 8 plus 16, which would have been 24. Had this been a minus, then it would have just been 8 minus 16, which would have been negative 8. But we would have done this part all the same. And that's what I think the benefit is of doing when you actually evaluate with numbers first. I think that's the benefit of doing that as opposed to doing the other stuff where you try to do what you did before and then chain them together, and just makes it a lot easier. So 49 times negative 2 is negative 98. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at these 6 right here. Okay? So we are just going to answer these last few, and we'll finish it up. So with multiplication, it's a good idea when you're multiplying with the variable, so you want a new function, to take each variable and put it in parentheses. I prefer to do that this time because it helps me know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then it tells me that, okay, well now we're going to distribute this. 2n needs to multiply by each piece. So 2n times 4n, 2 times 4 is 8, n times n, there's 2 of them, so n squared. And then we've got 2n times negative 3. 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6n. Can't combine those. There's my answer. Okay, 22, n plus 4. Put in parentheses times f of n, which is just 4n. So n needs to go times in by 4n. So n times 4n would be 4n squared, because there's 2 n's. Then 4 times 4n. 4 times 4 would be 16. It's positive, so plus 16n. And there's my new function. Then 23, x squared minus 3 times 2x. So this 2x times x squared. 2x is a third x, so it's 2x cubed. 2x times negative 3 would give us negative 6x, so minus for this negative and 6x. And we end up with it like that. 24, f is 2t times g negative t cubed plus 2. So negative 2t, or positive 2t times negative t cubed. So that's a positive, actually negative 2, because that's like negative 1. So negative 1. Then t, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So t to the 4th. Okay, then 2t times 2 2 times 2 is 4, so we get 4t positive, so plus 4t. And there's my new function. Finally, the last two. 3x times negative 2x plus 3, g and h. Negative 3x times negative 2x would be a negative 6x squared. 3x times 3 would be a positive 9x. Now the last one, okay, it's a little different because now we got two of these guys. But we treat it the same way. 4n plus 3 times 3n plus 3. And now each piece here is going to multiply the other two. So I'm going to go 4n times 3n. Okay, just like here, right? Each one had to go to both of those two, or each one had to go to the other two. So 4 times 3 is 12, n times n is n squared. Then I'm going to go 4n times 3. 4 times 3 is 12, positive, so positive 12, and then with the n. Then 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, so positive 9. And finally, 3 times 3n. So each one of these has multiplied by the other two, haven't they? And that would be a positive 9n. Then we combine like terms, 12n and 9n. So we get 12n squared plus 21n plus 9, and that is our end result. Okay? So that's quite a bit, but that's kind of how we add, subtract, multiply, and we don't worry about dividing these because we don't want to do that. Okay? All right, guys.